as I said, where I come from, I can acknowledge that there is a really dark history that the Black culture has had to overcome that I didn't.
I also want to say that everyone has to overcome that, because that is America.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not
So
just
that-
because
And that's
I
the Democrat Party.
You're
That was the Democrat Party.
No, that's an
KKK,
American
Jim Crow
problem.
law, slavery was all the Democrat Party.
But you
Okay, again, the senior citizen from the South. I went to private schools. They had the Black Catholic school and they had the white Catholic school. The one tuition was one price for the black kids, one tuition was one price for the white kids. And now, 60 years later, what has changed? We still have things. I'm a registered nurse again, but I've had the worst clients with a bachelor's degree in nursing, worst clients with less pay. I had to orient, and they're Christian in me, orient and help white nurses, Hispanic nurses that didn't speak English, Filipino nurses that didn't speak English. I got paid less. So if we talk about money and white privilege, how am I not the supervisor, but I have to train you to be the supervisor?
But also, isn't it
White
judging
privilege.
us by our skin color? If you say white privilege, you're assuming because I have lighter skin that I just had it so easy.
That's actually not what the assumption is. It's not even an assumption. You just haven't had to go through any of these hardships because of your skin color.
How do you know that? I came from Iran. I came from fleeing a
you're
country.
You're white passing.
And by the way, my half sister who lives there, she never plays the victim card. Even
That's
though
great.
she's and let me finish. There's women that can't do the things that we do in this country. And the thing to me, I believe it's a psyop. If you're saying someone has white privilege, what are you saying about people that have darker skin, that they're beneath you? That's called,
Well, let's
to me,
figure
that's
out what
called
she's
white
saying and let her
supremacy.
finish.
Yeah, wait,
That's called white supremacy.
If I can, because like it even goes beyond not being that deep. Like, of course, we all know black men are killed disproportionately than white men by police, and then their murderers.
They do 60% of the crime. That's a statistic.
Hey, please let me speak.
I know,
You've
but I'm
spoken for
just-
like 20 minutes. I've spoken for like 2. There is deep stuff like that. There is real stuff. Communities that are like still trying to get their families out of the trenches because of redlining and, like you said, different tuitions and unequal pay and stuff like that. But then there's even stuff like they just now started making Band-Aids on our skin color. Like it's even as like simple as that. Bandages were made to match your skin tone. For so long, nude was only in your skin tone. Only just now am I wearing a bra underneath this that is closer to my skin tone, but this came out in a lingerie line that came out in the last 10 years.
But that's a corporation. That's
No,
not
no,
government.
No, but
That's a corporation.
A person is running
you
that.
should tell the corporation we would love to have it in our skin
reflective
color.
of the larger society.
it feels like irrelevant and dumb that I'm like saying this now by itself, but just along with like bandages, but there's also like makeup lines. It was really hard. My mom, when she was learning how to contour her face, we had to use black eyeshadow because there was nothing in her skin tone at all, like her foundation. And then one time I ordered makeup online in my skin tone and they gave me a sample and it was like the lightest sample they had. It's like they weren't even considering that maybe the person who was ordering this wasn't white. And then if you go on set somewhere, the black hairstylists and black makeup artists are always expected to be able to handle everybody. They do everybody's hair, they do everybody's makeup, but white hairstylists have done some crazy shit to my hair, crazy shit, and said things like, oh, I've never worked with this kind of texture before, even though they're the professional hired to be on set that day. We're expected to do it all.
I will say, I think there's like a privilege, I know that sounds crazy, to being, having to do more than us and having gone through so much. I think that we've heard a lot about spirituality, but I feel like because you guys have gone through so much, there's like an enlightenment to you. I always feel such a drawl and just so seen in a way that I don't feel as much with white people, I would say. So, I mean, I will just say that I feel like you guys are magnets, and I hope that your voice gets heard more, because I think that there has been a lot of trauma of just invisibility, and your way of rising through it and still being survivors and stuff I don't know, I've always felt like it's been super special. And I'm so thankful for the relationships that I've had.
Shit, not the bridge being built.
Not the bridge.
I will never forget, let me just say, when I was younger, I will never forget looking over as a young kid and seeing a black man get out of a Mercedes and something, I was like, that's success. And there was just always that vision. And I know it doesn't have to be like a superficial symbol, but there was just something implanted in me as a young kid. And I had a buzzed head when I was young, and I felt like I think I've allowed myself to see that, like, having shorter hair as a female, like, I haven't seen myself a lot on, in the media. And I've heard that be a complaint of a lot of other people of not feeling that represented. So I think kind of feeling othered a lot in my own world in just a small way had made me feel like a kinship. And so I think that while there's privilege to being white, I feel like there's another privilege that doesn't get spoken about of actually having to suffer, because those are the people that really know how to, like, have resilience and rise up and actually listen and just thrive. So
I know that we were just celebrating the bridge you made, and I don't want to tear it down, but I think I had a different response seemingly than the rest of the room to that. I know that you mean well by that, and I can see that you're very genuine. I have a really hard time sitting with the idea that the significant trauma that the Black community has experienced in this country has made us enlightened, and that there's like this beautiful spiritual quality that it's given us, because I think it feels, and maybe I'm just speaking to the way that's landed for myself, like a huge bypassing of how genuinely traumatic that is, to be like, well, look at you, like you're radiant now.
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm
saying
that's
that, like,
the way that
you've been through something, whereas, like, we're over here and who knows how much we've even been through.
Yeah, and like I'm not.
But you've
disagreeing
also
with
rolled
that.
your eyes at so many people that have been speaking, so I don't know if that's your.
I mean, a lot of really insane things have been said.
I don't know if
but
that's your immediate response, is just to roll your eyes. I might not have the best, like, language with it, but I know that, like, on a soul level, like, I feel I have a lot of awe and respect.
And
that
I
is-
appreciate that a lot.
Take it where you can get it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All I'm saying is this idea that somehow having endured what the Black community has endured in this country and coming out the other end, barely surviving, there are people right now who are not surviving, that's somehow a privilege is ludicrous. And like, maybe what you said completely landed wrong with me, but that's how I took all of that, and that's all that's
There
fine.
is no historical educational context to this conversation, although I appreciate everything every single person has attributed. I genuinely do hear about the topic. This is systematic, which means you as individual people may totally not be doing anything at all to perpetuate this. It just is. I have certain privileges. Everybody here has certain privileges. This is systematic. Black women are 4 times more likely to die with anything related to do with maternity. You know what I mean? Like, this is systemic.
Explain that.
And then
explain
also
that.
too, which I really appreciate you bringing up, and I'm going to connect it, which I really appreciate you bringing up.
Which part?
I'm going to tell you
Yeah, I'm
earlier when you
curious.
said the
I've
stuff
never
about
heard
like
that.
Reconstruction and Black codes and Jim Crow, right? Like, you were saying all those things. A lot of that stuff, my sister is also a nurse. So like, let's say medical documentation for an example. Like, this is a little bit of an example, right? It'll say like, for white patients, sometimes more often than not by studies in the field, it'll say, this patient, expressed that they had, pain, and they were very agitated because they were in so much pain. For a Black patient, it'll say more often than not, this person was aggressive
seeking.
or like med seeking. We need to, you know what I mean? It's like there's always a suspicion because that comes from another lineage. So just as there was so much trauma passed on with us, which thank you for acknowledging, it's true, there was a lot of other stuff passed on to a lot of other people, and that's why we have people marching in the streets chanting that same rhetoric in 2025. And so I think there's this misconception that, like, if we acknowledge white privilege exists, I went viral for saying that when I was on another platform and they asked me 5 years ago, do white people experience racism? And I said no, because in context, which we don't know and we're not taught, so I'm not mad at anybody here, because as a teacher, I realize the fundamental thing is that we don't know our own history as Americans, race aside. And maybe if we did, we could actually get past race and deal with the issues that are affecting all of us, like classism and foreign entities. And to your point, people at the top controlling these narratives and all this other stuff. But I'm gonna stop because I could go on forever. But as a teacher and just as a human being, the fact that there's no systemic fundamental basis to anything that we're saying when we talk about the nuance of white privilege, because it was built into systems. The whole idea of race was a construct. There's only one race, that's the human race.
Correct.
There are black people that will
I
hear that and
agree.
get so pissed off at me for saying that.
But I love
that is
it.
the truth.
That's what we got to get back to.
Racism is not about blackness. Racism is about whiteness. Because when slavery happened, there were Native Indians, there were poor whites, and there were slaves. And they were all not too far from the same hardships. So people that were wealthy, just like now, were like, we got to find a way to separate these people. So they told poor white people, well, you know what, you might be poor, but at least you're not black. You know, and I'm using that language intentionally. So all of that was put into policies to make to what we see today. So it's just, you know, I understand what you're saying about the Band-Aids in the hair, and it's real. Shout out to Fenty. But
It's a Fenty bra.
I love it. I love it.
But couldn't that be also because of the population rather than the color of your skin? Could it be like, oh, we're learning how to do hair?
Yeah, but she's sharing
let me
her
finish.
experience.
Let me finish what
I'm sharing
Yeah, let me
American
finish what I'm
history.
saying. Can I finish my thought, please? So we're looking at the population, the black community is 13%. So when people are learning to do hair, maybe it has nothing to do with just because you're black. It has to do with people are learning how to do the majority of the population's
That's always
hair.
been the excuse.
That's
So,
true, but
I'm just saying
that's
that
why I
it could
brought
be,
in real
this is what I'm
historical,
saying, but we
systemic,
see
and systematic
everything
examples.
in color. And when I've gone to board meetings, this is what bothers me. I go to a school board meeting and they talk about white privilege and this. So you're telling my child who's never been a part of, Jim Crow law, racism, any of this, that she's an oppressor and that black kids are oppressed. I believe both of them are evil, and I'll tell you why. Number one, how do you keep a person down? You tell them they're a victim, and there's no way of rising
agree
up.
with that,
And
because
I think
it'll-
that's a psyop.
White-
I think that's
white privilege will
psychological
never stop
warfare.
my black excellence.
Yeah, let me finish.
So
I
we
think
agree.
that's a psychological warfare against the black kids, and I think it's also a psychological warfare against white kids because they have to feel shame and guilt of something that they've never been a part of, and it's a divide. Now they're pitting white kids against black kids. That's wrong because, again, as a Christian, we believe there is no such thing as race. We believe we are all in the image of God. That's why it upsets me because it is divisive.
But you see how I'm the one that injected that? So I believe that as history, because historically that's what happened. But to say racism was not a construct that came and was implemented and imposed to validate segregation, Jim Crow.
Oh, I think it's awful.
The Reconstruction,
And,
all
yeah,
that.
I'm totally against
it would be a
the
miss.
racist
I do wanna hear from
Democrats.
you.